Kentucky is known for two things: horse racing and bourbon. Home of bourbon. So when Revell came out with this 39 Chevy, see that word, Kentucky, I had to have this kit. Reminds me of a rum runner, maybe. I think this is going to be cool. Let's get this thing opened up and get her built. Start off with the instructions. It tells a little bit about the 39 Chevy. This is what I like. Every single part in the instructions, it tells exactly what it is. It tells you what the part is. And this was always cool learning when I was a kid building models on, learning my car parts. It goes through everything. It's not a high parts count kit either, showing 88. The instructions look very clear. Starts off with the engine. I mean, it doesn't get more clearer than that. It has a nice little high-rise manifold. Suspension. Throwing the interior in. This is what I like about the kit. The barrels. Haven't seen them barrels in years, since the beer wagon, Coca-Cola wagon maybe. Interior, super simple. This is an easy kit to build, guys. I've built several of these 39s, and they go together wonderful. So when they came out with this version, it was a must-have. And that's it on the instructions. Oh, did we miss one? We missed a page. Throwing the body together. Mirrors, lights. Very simple build. And this builds up nice too. Decal placement. And your decals. Kentucky barrel, your root beer, pops. Great looking decal sheet. Pinstriping. Tire decals. License plates. Very nice decal sheet. Let's look at the body. Of course, this comes off, so you can do the fenders a different color if you want. That always looks cool on these older cars. Doors separate. Very nice body. Crisp lines, really no mold lines. Very nice body. Nice thing about these panels too, you can put anything back here if you want to make a shop truck or whatever. These are always cool. There's your hood. Let's get the hood opened up. There's the hood, and of course the grill will fill all that in. Here's your glass. Glass looks nice, looks clear. Headlight lenses. Chrome sheet. There's your grill, your bumpers, valve covers. Wheels. There's that tunnel ram. Nice looking chrome tray. What we got in here? There's the barrels. There's what we like. Love these barrels. Haven't seen these barrels in years. Tell you what, those decals and those barrels, this car making a shop truck, I'm getting pretty jazzed up about this. Headers, heads, headlights. Headlights are separate. Those are cool headlights. Interior. Your frame, exhaust is molded in. Rear end, leaf springs. There's that door. The engine, everything looks nice. Front suspension, This is super easy build. Very highly recommend this kit. There's your tires, and they're bigs and littles. Tread pattern's nice. Anyway, let's get to building this thing. I always start off on getting all my halves glued together. The engine, the seats, or whatever two pieces need glued together. And then if anything needs dechromed, I like to use that Purple Power. Pour a little bit in a container and drop my parts in. And usually after maybe an hour or so, chrome's gone and they're ready to go. Here I'm starting to get some things mocked up, trying to figure out which route I'm going to go with this. I got all kinds of ideas in mind. You can probably tell by the thumbnail which route I went. Those pieces that stick out, those frame horns that hold the front and rear bumpers on, I decided to cut those off because I really kind of don't like the front and rear bumpers on this style of car. And there's the bumpers there. The locating points for the frame is very nice. The frame locates right down onto the chassis pan, so you cannot mess up how you locate the frame. The exhaust, I decided to cut all the exhaust off, but I was careful doing that because those two pieces that look like cherry bombs, I'm keeping those. Those will work great on a hot rod. There's the frame all cleaned up, sitting down there. And this is where I'm deciding to cut off those frame horns that hold the front and rear bumpers on. I marked them with pencil. That's marked, and I cut them off both sides. There's those cherry bombs that I'm saving. I end up cutting off, and those are going into the parts bin for some cool hot rod. Here's some stock that I'm using because I've decided to raise the front end to make this a gasser. So I'm cutting some plastic stock down. There's the pieces I'm using for the blocks to raise the front and rear end up. And just mocking some things up and having fun and playing with this. You can do so much with this kit. That's another great thing about this kit. Not only does it build well, but you can do so many things with it. I cut off those pieces off the end of the headers and then open up the end of my headers. I think it gives a lot more realistic look, especially since I wasn't using the exhaust that came with the kit. Firewall glues right in, no problem. Here I'm getting headers painted, getting the end of the headers painted black, working on the engine. Engine goes together great, great looking engine, and I love tunnel rams. But everything locates right on very nicely. Here I'm working on the front grille. That's the paint I used. There's the paint I used to give it also a wash at the very end to fill in those black lines. Gives it a nice convincing look. That Vallejo wash is very nice, and it's easy on your paint too. It doesn't hurt the paint. And the grille's done. Going to give a little wash on the headers. They were a little too clean for this build, so I kind of dirtied them up with a little bit of a wash. Just slap a whole bunch of the wash on and then just start wiping it off, basically. That's how you come up with that effect there. A little bit more realistic, grungy look. The carburetors. I'm kicking around these carburetors. That's what comes in the kit. They're okay, I guess. Not a big fan of them. Painted them up. Still looking at them. Well, I found some carburetors in my parts box. Those are the ones in the back. Decided to go with those. I think they look a lot better. Here's some rear tires I'm going to go with, and front tires. This thing's going to turn into a drag car or a gasser. So I'm getting the tires and wheels mocked up. And I notice now that the rear fenders won't go over the rear tires. So I was like, darn it, what do I do now? And I kind of miss it quite a bit. So I found a diameter that's close to the rear tires, put some sandpaper around it, and just started rubbing. And I just kept twisting that until I got my diameter open big enough on both sides so where it'll slip over the rear tires. Here I'm showing you how the engine looks when it's built up. And again, it's a very simple, realistic engine to build. Looks great when done. I love a tunnel ram engine. And the grill looks great when finished up. This is a nice kit.
it's a super easy kit to build, even if you modify a few things like I did right there. Just everything's very basic and simple. Not a high parts count kit either. Everything fits right in. The rear door, I'm trying to decide what I'm going to do with the rear door. The hinges on the rear door, I've never really liked the hinges. They seem a little bit big and bulky. So I glued the hinges on. I'm not going to make this door open and close. I think it's designed to where you can open and close it. I really don't like moving parts on my models. They just sit there. I don't move things around on them. So I glued the hinges on, got that all set, and you can see how the hinges stick out pretty far. So I'm trying to decide what I'm going to do with those. There's the parts I'm not using, the tires and wheels and the front and rear bumper. Decided not to go with those. Those came in the kit. These weathering sets from Tamiya, I really like these. I'll use those a lot in a lot of my weathering projects, especially the soot. You've seen it before. I'll take that soot, which is there in the top center, and get a little bit on that little whatever applicator it is and rub it onto the end of my headers. There's the primer I used for this little hot rod, just a simple primer that you can buy anywhere. There's the black I tried for the frame. It came out a little bit glossy. It was okay. But just trying to save a little bit of money on this project, so I went with those two spray cans. The primer, that's the primer I used to paint the headers white. It's a nice white primer, and there is the Vallejo wash I used to do the grill. I've got to do something with that back door still. Those hinges are still too big. I'm not happy with them. So what I've done on the hinges is I kind of sanded them down to make them a little bit more realistic. Now I'm deciding to salt this thing, the salt technique for weathering. You just wet the area, sprinkle salt on it, and wait for everything to dry. It'll take a couple, 3 or 4 hours. The dashboard, I decided to paint the dashboard a real pretty blue. There's the paint I used, that Star Spangled Banner blue. Gorgeous blue. And here's some more paints I'm using. I mixed those two paints up right there in my airbrush. And that is the cream color for the top. I didn't want a stark white. I'm kind of going with something that looks like the box art, not quite. But it was a nice blue, or a nice cream that I liked. So now I taped off the bottom. I like to use the Tamiya tape to run my line around to give me a nice line for no bleed through. There's my Tamiya tape. And I'm going to mix that blue color that I just showed you a minute ago and paint that. So there's my blue. Now my door, I got to get that door painted. Actually, kind of forgot about the door once I sanded that. So I put it in gray. I was going to leave it in gray primer, and I think I will probably just leave it in gray primer. And actually, the reason I came up with that gray is because I'm working on that tank right now, and I just got done painting the gray on that tank. It's a German gray. So while I was painting that tank, while I was waiting for all my salt and everything to dry, I thought, well, that's a good color to paint that door. It's a gray primer. And it looks pretty cool, pretty convincing. See, there's my gray and my gray. So, kind of like a happy little accident, so to speak, while I was waiting. Now, once your paint is dry, all you have to do is just take your finger or something and just start rubbing the salt off. And where you rub the salt off is going to reveal what you have underneath. And it's going to show that reddish colored primer that I used to give it the rust look. Now I'm rubbing the blue also. Now, obviously I've already taken off the tape. But just start rubbing. I like this technique. It's very convincing. It's very relaxing for me too. You really can't mess up. It's your call on how much salt you want to lay on this thing. Too little, too much. There's no wrong, so there is no too little or too much. It's your build. You do it how you want. And trust me, every car out there in the world is weathered differently. And here I'm kind of starting to blend my blue a little bit. I'm picking up a little bit of blue on my Q-tips. I wanted to kind of fade out the blue some. So to do that, I just started rubbing it with some Q-tips and some towels just to pull some blue up. Kind of a sneaky little way to pull some paint up before you clear everything with flat or clear. I just start rubbing everything, and also when you're rubbing some things, it blends everything in. You want to do a lot of blending when you weather. You don't want harsh lines. Everything gets blended. But just keep on rubbing on it. I'm sitting there watching TV and just messing with this model and rubbing till I think it looks done. And again, it's your model, so it's done when you think it's done. And everything still fits together. You got to stick that body onto the fenders because sometimes you'll have some salt and some cracks and crevices, and you don't want that. So that's why I kept putting the body on. And it looks like I pretty much got it all ready to roll. I didn't mess with the firewall. I thought I'd keep the firewall that primer color. I think that looks pretty cool. There's that primered door. I pretty much left the door alone too. Now I'm gluing the glass in. There's the glue I use for glass. I tape the glass in, then put the glue around it. Another neat little tip. Tape that glass in. And then once everything's dry, you can hold the glass down while you pull the tape off, and the glass just stays in one place while you glue it. I've had too many accidents where I've glued things down and not used tape, and it made a mess. But there's a difference between the real carburetors and the kit carburetors. There's the ones I used on the top again. So that's what they look like versus the kit carburetors. And there is the finished model. What do you think about that? But like you saw in the thumbnail, I've got a bonus. Actually, there's two bonuses. Got this one here, and we're going to show you what I did on the other one, and a double bonus. I actually took a little road trip for this video, and I went to a place in Louisville, Kentucky that makes all the bourbon barrels and shot some cool pictures of real bourbon barrels and what they look like so we can have a little painting reference on some bourbon barrels. But anyway, here's the other one I'm messing with. I also cut the frame horns off the front and rear, but this time I filled in the holes. Here I'm getting it in some primer. There's the white color of paint I used for the top. It's kind of an ivory color. It's a Vallejo. Mixed it up, threw it in the airbrush, painted it. Same salt technique. Well, I won't go through everything because I just went through it about 5 minutes ago. There's the tape I used again. Can't stress enough that Tamiya tape for masking. There's the brown I used for the bottom. Getting her ready to roll. Looks like some chocolate milk, actually. Hey, do you remember Quick chocolate milk? Man, I love that Quick chocolate milk. Used to drink the heck out of that. Let me know if you ever had Quick chocolate milk or what, Ovaltine. Remember Ovaltine? But anyway, I'm weathering this thing too the exact same way. But the only thing I did different in this kit, I scavenged a bent seat out of my parts bin and went with a bent seat on this one. There's the bent seat on the left, and I'm using a Mexican seat blanket to cover it. Put a whole bunch of glue over the seat, and now I am covering my seat with a Mexican seat blanket. I did a video quite a while back on making Mexican seat blankets and doing them. So if you want to see how to do a Mexican seat blanket, go back in my archives and check out that video. It's really cool on making Mexican seat blankets. Now this thing's just a slammer, and there it is. It's just slammed on the ground. Different tires and wheels. Use the decals, the Kentucky Bourbon decals. Is this cool or what? Just slam this thing on the ground. Basically used all the same techniques as the other one. I thought it turned out pretty cool. There they are both together. My gasser's raised up in the air, and I got my slammer sitting on the ground. One with a hood and one without a hood. Man, this was a fun kit to build. Definitely recommend this kit. It's an easy kit, guys. You can do so much with it. You got to get you one and build it. But anyway, let's get to the extra footage.
Little bonus footage. We are at Kelvin Cooperage Bourbon and Wine Barrels here in Louisville, Kentucky. They actually make the barrels for all the companies, for all the bourbon and wine. So let's check out how these barrels, let's see what these barrels really look like in real life. I don't think you can go wrong doing a barrel. A little bit of anything and everything, from rust to no rust to the new barrels are inside that look real pretty. Just a little bonus footage I thought you guys would enjoy.
Again, there's no right or wrong way on doing these barrels. The barrels I'm showing and the barrels that I painted up are more used barrels. All the barrels that I showed outside here are used barrels. In fact, they said they're 2 years out on selling these barrels. You're on a waiting list for over 2 years to get these. But if you want to do a brand new barrel, they're nice and pretty, and everything on them's brand new looking, obviously. But an excellent kit. Highly recommend this kit. You guys will love it, and it's super easy to go together. But I just thought you'd like this little road trip I did on the barrels.
Well, what'd you think about those builds and this barrel footage? We'll see you guys on the next video on Throttle Power.